Dr. Teba, I recognize you. Good afternoon. I also saw Professor Stefan Nora and all the colleagues that are on the line. Thank you so much for joining us once again um, for this very exciting webinar series. My name is Reni Munyai, and my role is quite simple this afternoon. I am not the moderator for today's webinar. I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Teba Gildias, who will be our moderator for today, and she will be guiding us and ensuring that our voices are heard as we engage in this very interesting topic on why hydrochemistry can be a game changer in hydrogeological studies and the how part. I'm actually excited about the how part. Dr. Teba, over to you. The floor is yours, and we are really all excited to have this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Reni. Hi, everyone. I'm Teba Gildias. I work for the WaMiSAR project, and I actually wanted to inform you all that our speaker, so Christoph Külls, he will arrive with delay. He has some issues and will come like in 30 minutes. So for this, I apologize for the delay. And in the meantime, yeah, we were thinking of introducing a bit the WaMiSAR project because it's within this scope of the webinar. And also, I would also mention Professor Stefan Nora. He is the PI of the WaMiSAR project. So I hope he also says some words. There is no, your mic.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Teba. Thank you very much, Teba. Thank you very much, Reni. I also apologize for the absence of Professor Külls. He promised to join in at 3 p.m. Here, German time. This is because of personal affairs he has to follow. So sometimes everybody of us has personal duties which pop up from 1 minute to the other minute, and we have to follow them. So sorry very much for that. And yeah, so Teba said we can have here a little chat about the WaMiSAR project. I don't know, we are a little bit now improvisating, and so please, yeah, apologize this. Just Teba, you said you would like to introduce a little bit to the WaMiSAR project. Do you have any slides for that? Then I would just say you don't have slides for that. Ah, okay. Good. Okay. So then it's, I see there are today extreme many people. That's great. So if you have any questions about the WaMiSAR project, elsewise, I propose that I just will open one of our presentations and I will give you a little introduction. All of you who are not interested in that, they also can just yeah, mute yourself and then take a coffee, come back in half an hour at 3 o'clock when Christoph Külls will start with his presentation finally. But just let me provide me with few minutes that I can open one of the presentations about the WaMiSAR project.
I would actually implore all participants to stay because there are also opportunities on how you can be part of this project. So please do stay and hear what Prof. Nora has to say.
Ah, okay, but this is something you can also tell the people about the opportunities to become part of the project because we offer always master thesis contents, bachelor thesis contents for those who are interested in that. Indeed, I think we still are looking for 2 master students at NAST to join the team. And furthermore, there will be also a new, as far as I know, a new SASCAL call for new scholarships for PhD students. This will come up, but Reni, you know more about that. Perhaps you can shortly, until I found my presentation, that you can give some information about that.
I will not speak specifically to the SASCO Graduate Studies Program because it has not yet been officially launched from our side. But what we would want to emphasize is we want to continue building a community of practice, not just for our students, but also looking at the various players within this particular landscape. And for this reason, I'm also appealing for potential presenters. If you have got interesting topics that you might want to share, what research you're doing that relates to the key focus of the WaMiSAR project, be it groundwater modeling, be it socioeconomic issues, speaking to mining water, environment, anything that you feel is relevant to share, please do get in touch with myself, Dr. Teba, and the PI for the project, Professor Stefan Nora. But we are also going to make sure we build a mailing list of the various participants that have been logging on to this platform so that when opportunities such as scholarships or other initiatives that align with the mandate of WaMiSAR come up, we would really want to share that information so that you're amongst the first people to know. But yes, if you're very much interested in following a research track and being part of the WaMiSAR community of practice, do get in touch with myself, Teba, as well as our PI, and we'll be very happy to add you to our webinar series and even follow-up engagements beyond just WaMiSAR. WaSA is organizing a number of summer schools to build capacity of postgraduate students. Would want to share all that information with you as and when it's made available. And as Prof. Stefan Nora said, maybe in the near future, there could be a new cohort of PhD fellows that might be advertised. When it happens, we will let you know. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rennie, for your introduction here and also for the situation about study possibilities. So I now found a nice presentation I just had to give, and this is perhaps also for some of you of interest who are accompanying us from a little bit outside, but looking always to us how we how we do. I just would like to share my I have to see where there I have to share today how we perform. Yeah, so this is something, and now I go for the I have to change. So I think now you see the presentation mode. That's right, Renio?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So this is a presentation I gave last week, because last week I went to South Africa, to Johannesburg, to meet colleagues from Sibanye, Stillwater, because here we have the opportunity also to work with Sibanye together on mine water remediation issues and also on mine deposit remediation issues. And so I think I just let you participate here, the slides I have prepared for them. So our project, as you know, is called Sustainable and Climate Adapted Water Management in Mining in the Southern African Region. And the aims, just to remember to this, is to develop a toolbox containing a set of instruments to support sustainable and climate adapted water management in the mining sector. And we focus mainly on pre and post mining activities. For example, on concepts for baseline studies on available water resources prior to mining and the use of mining water for mine residue deposits, for example, for greening them, respectively, in situ remediation and mining affected groundwater resources after the mining. So you see here a little slide. I just give me some time here, laser pointer. This is our mine residue deposit. We look for the baseline studies before mining. We investigate the water balances of the mine residue deposits. We analyze especially also the Vadose zone to develop concepts for greening these mine residue deposits, and then also to propose irrigation concepts for drought periods or for the periods when the plants are starting to grow, when we plant them itself. And then we also have the groundwater remediation issues, because often, we have high sulfate concentrations, sometimes also high metal concentrations or metalloid concentrations. And therefore, we develop concepts to clean the groundwater and also to clean the surface water. That means, finally, the aim is to have a kind of toolbox about ecological oriented concepts to implement baseline studies for the use of water resources in mining, a toolbox for adapted remediation strategies for groundwater resources which are contaminated by mining, to develop adapted filter strategies for the use of mining water. This means not the high-end filter strategies like with the ultra filtration membrane or something like this. This means mainly using local materials to filter the, for example, salts out of the mine water before we use them for irrigation purposes. Then also a sustainable use of water resources for stockpile recultivation, because one idea still is what also the mining companies have in mind. If we irrigate mine residue deposits, it makes it not necessary that we really clean them until a drinking water level. Since if they pour here in the mine residue deposit again, percolate inside, then they will get partly contaminated, let's say in brackets, as again. So this is probably not the need for this kind of water use. And finally, we also have a toolbox for the socioeconomic assessment concepts for sustainable use of mining water resources. That means, what does it cost everything to clean up the groundwater, surface water, or also the mine water when we use it for irrigation. This is also done in our project. So finally, it's a little bit the idea behind. Probably we will not be able to fill all these three-dimensional coordination system items here, because also of time limitation. But finally, the idea is we have on one axis the waste material and water quality. That means the contamination type or the commodity. We have the economic costs, and we have the climate variability. And so that means if we have such a manual or toolbox, we just can pick out the climate where we are in, the commodity or contamination type. And we see then also the cost, which we will be faced by if we go for remediation concepts, irrigation concepts, baseline study concepts, and so on. So there are also a lot of results from our previous project. It was a kind of definition project. This definition project resulted in 8 reports from colleagues from the Desert Research Foundation of Namibia, from NAST, from SASCAL, and from Potsdam University on different items. And you are very much invited to download them from this web page here from the Potsdam University. That's my group there on soil sciences and geoecology. So where are we in Southern Africa? So we are in Stampriet in East Namibia, Botswana. This is a region where Christoph Külls is actually working in because here there's some planning of uranium mining in the groundwater. So there are missing some baseline studies, and this is the example for us to lay out concepts for holistic, comprehensive baseline studies prior to mining. Then we work in Namibia, here in Matchless, central Namibia, with Consolidated Copper together on historic copper mining, on the acid main drainage we find there, as well as on the mine residue deposits. We work in Rochepinha on the active lead and zinc mining, which produce a lot of flotations. Here also a new Mine is planned to open in future, so this will become quite interesting. And they really face also lead issues here in Roshpinja, where we can help with our team. In Tsumeb in northern Namibia, there's a historic copper mining and a recent copper smelting. The copper smelter was closed by our partner there from Sinomine during the last months, and they now focus not so much on copper anymore. Interestingly, they focus much more on germanium and cesium, because in all the tailings here we have a lot of germanium and cesium. That also was a reason that we had to switch our mine residue deposit, where we looked for irrigation and greening concepts from the very beginning, because yeah, if there's a lot of germanium and cesium and everybody of us wants to have a laptop on his desk, then somebody has to mine germanium and cesium, which is needed here, therefore. We are also still working and considering the Brook Street issue in South Africa, that is also near to Johannesburg, an abandoned mine with a lot of safety or security issues, better said, because nobody feels responsible anymore for that. We have been in contact with the Department of Water and Sanitation of South Africa here. We are in contact with the WWF, who wants to work here. Here is a challenge really to get always the access to the site, because you need caretakers, you need security personnel, which is going together with you. There's also wastewater or a mine water treatment plant, interestingly, which has not operated during the last years. But now there is from Denmark, there's a project to get that wastewater or mine water treatment plant running again. And so it would be very helpful and would be very meaningful also to take care for the polluted groundwater by sulfate, and also to take care for all these sources which you see on the top of the old tailings here. And as I said, we are working with Sibanye now also in northern South Africa. We have not selected finally the tailing we will work on, but we will go there in mid of this year, and we will also work on issues about reducing the sulfate concentration in the mine water over there. So these are our selected sites in Tsumeb, Matchlets, Roshpinja, Brook Street. Sibanye is nearby Brook Street, and Stamford, with our 4 objectives to develop hydrological and hydrogeological studies for water balances of tailings and new groundwater models, to develop adapted water treatment concepts, to revitalize the mine residue deposits, either using crops or biomass. And this is something perhaps also which can be an issue for Tsumeb, because I just so they just opened there a large biomass plant, and this could be a synergy over there. If crops and biomass are not feasible, then at least that we bring back the biodiversity on the mine residue deposits and develop the irrigation concepts for that, and also develop these socioeconomic studies. That means microeconomic studies on the water prices, or macroeconomic studies for the mining societies which are living there. So our project management in Namibia is carried out by the Desert Research Foundation of Namibia, Martin Schneider, Alexandra Speiser. Then also Rennie is mentioned here from the Namibia University of Science and Technology, which helps us a lot with the organization of all the work in Namibia. And in South Africa, we work together with Charles Harding and Lena Sophie Kur from Nexus Future Innovation, which takes over the coordination issues there in South Africa. So the intended work at the different sites here, because I said I was in Sibanye and we agreed on cooperation just last week. I haven't inserted them until now, but we have here ZooMap with Sinomine with a different climate here. Brookstreet has 760 and then it goes down to 34 in Rosh Pina. And also we have temperatures from 16 degree in average in the year in South Africa to almost 30 degree at Stampriet. We have different commodities from copper, uranium, lead, zinc to coal. We work on hydrological studies, water treatment, phytoremediation studies. That means the revegetation studies in socioeconomic studies. And we have also divided it to different contexts who are responsible for the single works. So here are our partners for the baseline studies. Christoph Külls from the University of Applied Science in Lübeck is responsible. Water monitoring, that is the University of Potsdam and the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology, as well as NAST mentioned here. The water balances, we have two companies working for that, Aquantec and Delta H. Aquantec more in Namibia, Delta H more in South Africa. The mine water treatment and use is carried out by Hydroisotope and University of Potsdam. The revegetation issues are covered by the Desert Research Foundation of Namibia and NAST and the University of Potsdam. We also take care about the geochemistry and mineralogy of the mine residue deposit, because on the passage of water through all the mines residues, the water will change in its pollutant concentration, and the interaction between the mine residue deposit and the water is quite important to know, because finally it will affect the groundwater and the aquifers, for which Sensortech and the Sensortech is a company, and the Technology Center for Water from Germany, another research entity, are responsible for. They look mainly for microbiological remediation techniques. For example, that you try to precipitate arsenic on iron oxides, but there you need oxidizing bacteria in the underground areas, or that you precipitate sulfate as sulfite. And here you also need such microbes. Here are some results which we have achieved so far. We installed sensor systems at ZooMap, Rosh Pina, Matchless, determined soil hydrological parameters in our labs, screening local plant species, developed low-cost soil moisture sensors. At KIT, we analyze the mineralogical and geochemical MRD material and characterize the chemistry of our different waters. The Lübeck University analyzed the hydrochemical data they got from the geological geological survey of Namibia. And they work already here in the Stampriet aquifer. Hydroisotope already used local filter materials to decrease sulfate concentrations in mine water. Aquantec carried out a lot of hydrological models already. TCW already identified sulfate reducing bacteria and arsenide oxidizing bacteria in the groundwater aquifers in ZooMap, and finally IREM, which do the economic modeling. They structured their economical financial model for our tailings we are looking for. We also, and this is perhaps of interest for you, we have a mine water education network we call MIWA EduNet, and this is something Rennie referred to, and we try to establish here a long-term cooperation. That means that we have scholarships for tandem student pairs. So if somebody, or if you know somebody who likes to do his master thesis at NAST, just give him the recommendation to contact Rennie for that. We have travel support for lecturers, either from Germany to Namibia or from Namibia to Germany, but also for technicians. That means we also will look for technicians from the companies involved, especially from Namibia and South Africa, that they can also get some training in German laboratories. We have this lecture program. You are just involved in that. We will have at least one summer school, and as I said, we have also on-site training for employees. So there have been, for example, some training from hydroisotope in Namibia already. So just contact Rennie or Teba or also me if you are interested in such education networks. There have been already colleagues, especially from ZUMEP, coming to Germany, and we sent them on a road tour to meet all our partners in Germany and to learn from them. So that is always possible. And in summertime, also Theo Wassner, a professor from NUST, will come to Potsdam University for a longer period, because he has a sabbatical to give courses in Potsdam and perhaps at Karlsruhe. And here we also get the support from the Potsdam University to invite Theo Wassner to Germany, because Namibia becomes more and more strategic partner for, or strategic region for the Potsdam University. Here's a list of seminars we will give today. Tracers in hydrology, that means Christoph will give a lecture later on, but there will come also other topics during the next months. This was the invitation of Christoph, and I have to admit that I don't see him yet. Perhaps Teba, when you see him, just let me know. That was the invitation, and it's great that so many of you are still in here to wait for Christoph. The concept of WaMiSAR, as I said, is this toolbox concept finally, based on a general project management, but also on a capacity building network. And this is something we really would like to, our project will end April of 2028, and the toolboxes will be then filled in. But it would be great that if we could have a sustainable education network at that time, and carry on with our exchange of lecturers and students. For example, also from not only from ZUMEP. At ZUMEP we have one PhD student now, that's Kamuia Kamundi. We also have master students and PhD students already at the at Roche Pina, who work together with Roche Pina. And so step by step, this capacity building network is increasing. So feel free to contact us. Here's an example of such a mine water treatment toolbox, which has been developed by Stefan Hüttmann from Sensatec. That is a company who looks for water remediation. First of all, you have to characterize the site. You need all the available data. Second, you have to characterize the geology, hydrogeology, and also the geochemistry. That includes chemical isotopic analysis, hydrogeological analysis, and modeling. And what is quite important for them always, because they look for all possibilities to use microorganisms like ecosystem services to use them to remediate the water bodies. So that means they look for molecular biology, they look for the biotoxicity and biostimulation, and also for on-site microbial activities. This is something which is done here in the Technology Center of Water. And then we have this working package 4 with the development of a conceptual site model, because these models always have to be individually adapted to the environment of the location. Then we need a test site for the remediation issues, because we cannot just start with remediation. We should test it first in a pilot. And finally, we will compile everything what we learned here in a toolbox for active remediation for water resources. And that's a modular toolbox which can then also, yeah, where new ideas can add it step by step. We also have a remediation toolbox developed for the revitalization of mine residue deposits. And you see we have here 3 main columns. First of all, we need to know the chemical composition and the mobilities of pollutants and hydrophysical properties of the mine residue deposit material. Often the hydrophysical properties are forgotten if you start with the revegetation of the mine residue deposits. But if you only look for the plant itself and not for the food chain, then the plant mainly struggles with the availability of water. So the hydrophysical properties are for the plant very often even more important as the chemical pollution of the soil or of the sediment where the plant shall grow on. Plants can cope with that. If you finally use it for crop cultivation, then you have to look for the food chain for sure. But if you look for the biodiversity improvement on such mine residue deposits, it's not so important for the plant. Nevertheless, you also may have dust resuspension, and then again, it becomes important to know about the chemical composition from the viewpoint of the human being health. Yeah, that means is the mine residue deposit material usable for planting or for vegetation, yes or no? If it is not, then we have to mitigate or to ameliorate the soil. And finally, we also have to conceptualize our improved soil conditions. And that means how much organic matter, sand, clay we have to add. We also have the analysis of the available water resources for irrigation. Also here it is the issue that mainly it is a problem if we have high pollutants in the water, yeah, for sure. And if these are cut ions, we even can try to get them out or unions with local materials. But what really affects the vegetation is the high salt content of many mining water, if you use it for revegetation, because the high salt content causes the osmosis effect that the plants cannot suck the water against the pressure or power of the salts to keep the water in the soil, and then the vegetation is dying, although you have enough water. But this salt issue is quite important. So that means we have either we can it directly, or we have to look for a solution to get the salts or also the extremely high contamination out of the water. And then we have to conceptualize the irrigation concept. And finally, we also have to look for the vegetation. And you are all from Namibia, and I know that, for example, prosopis, if you know prosopis is wonderful if from the viewpoint of greening the tailings, because it is almost growing everywhere, but it's an invasive species and nobody likes to get prosopis, and it does not belong to the Namibian environment. So we have to look for indigenous, for native species, or at least for non-invasive species, which, for example, could be ground like date, for example, that can grow on tailings. And if you have identified these different vegetation species, then we have to speak with the mining companies. What really is the aim of getting vegetation on the tailings itself, either crop production, biomass production. There's even a new concept followed in phytomining, that you try to use plants not only for phytoremediation, but also that you extract with plants the valuable elements, or whether you focus on biodiversity conservation. And then you have to assess also the potentially usable plants, whether they can cope with the environment. Then you develop the planting concept according to the chosen species. You bring everything together and you can implement your on-site revegetation measures. So this is our plan here for the remediation toolbox. And since Christoph is now in, and thanks for that, I think this is a wonderful point to stop with my overview of our WaMiSAR ideas we have in the moment, and to hand over to Christoph to start his presentation on isotope tracers. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, and I really apologize thoroughly for this delay. Do you hear me all? Is the sound good and the camera?
Yes.
Yeah, wonderful.
Okay, so I invite you now on my webinar talk, why hydrochemistry can be a game changer in hydrogeological studies and how. And next slide, please. Yes, I want to show you how hydrochemistry can be used to do some studies that go beyond a mere description of the hydrogeological system. And I invite you, I'm from Technische Hochschule Lübeck. This is a photo from Arnold Pittner taken in Namibia. I just want to try to open that gate on how to use hydrochemistry for you. And I try to make a peek into the toolbox. So what's in the box? This is the purpose of my talk today. Next slide. So during the first part, it will be a bit shorter, about 10 minutes. I will ask why we do this. I will try to motivate the study, and I will discuss measures and scales of hydrochemical studies. It's an important point. Reactions to equilibria. And I will introduce a pyramid of methods that I follow during my work. And I want to outline some applications. So from that, I want to move on to the how. So how we can actually implement hydrochemical studies. And I want to present a workflow. The workflow that is also shown below in the process chain. A modern workflow that is reproducible and that uses open source software. That goes from visualization through transformation to conception, correlation, reduction, separation, and then finally modeling, quantitative modeling, which is the overall goal. Next slide, please. At the beginning, we have to work very well. So when we go to the field, all hydrochemistry is based on sampling, and we actually have to make sure that sampling is really done properly. So if we take a groundwater sample, that the sampling actually separates the groundwater during sampling from the atmosphere. And I just show some pictures of how it looks when we take samples here or in the field. So we have through-flow cells, we measure online monitoring, we have a proper characterization of the site. So if this is not going well, it's very difficult, if not impossible, to do certain analysis. Next slide, please. This is a photo taken from a study in Luxembourg where we actually analyzed partly reduced aquifers and where we also use gases dissolved in the groundwater. So there you can only do this if you actually completely isolate your sampling environment from the atmosphere during sampling, and if you do this well. Next slide, please. As you see here, the well that is actually sampled with has also been characterized with a depth profile. We see a clear difference between the upper and the lower part of the aquifer. Mixing this water will actually result in a complete mess hydrochemically and thermodynamically. So it's very important to have this characterization first. Next slide, please. And I discovered in my photos this slide from Muumbil Vendo, who was with us during the practical training. And this slide is meant, besides saying hello to him or to the people who know him, he just got his PhD, that of course also clean and thorough laboratory work is absolutely necessary before we even go further. Next slide, please. Under the why topic, I said that we have to consider scales. So what do I mean with scales? So first of all, we talk about spatial scales. So on the left-hand side, we have the catchment and the aquifer. On the right-hand side, pore. Most of our methods actually assume that we work at a laboratory scale. Most of the hydrochemical methods come from laboratory chemistry. And we have to actually consider the differences when we move from one single flask or one single bottle that we shake in the lab to the catchment or to an aquifer. At the aquifer, hydrological and hydrogeological processes coexist with hydrochemical processes, and their spatial scales and temporal scales are very, very important. So while we actually look at mineral reactions, gas exchange, organic matter reactions, cation exchange, and we are very well able to describe these processes at the pore scale under certain assumptions regarding equilibria and reaction kinetics. The picture is much more confounded if we look at the catchment. Next slide, please. This picture was taken from an aquifer study where we actually investigated thermodynamic reactions and their kinetics at the pore scale. This is basically a scale at which hydrochemistry is quite simple. We'll see another picture later on in the talk. We can identify minerals, we can identify the phases, we have a clean picture of our hydrochemical model. We can even assess the dimensions, the surfaces, the volumes, and actually model this. However, if we move to the basin scale or aquifer scale, next slide, please, things become a bit more complicated. So this slide from Stum and Morgan shows the different temporal scales of chemical reactions. So while some reactions are quite fast, such as solute-solute water reactions, or quite fast, such as gas-water reactions, dissolution, or something in between like adsorption, other like mineral water equilibria, mineral recrystallization take months to years, sometimes 10,000, 100,000 years. For example, the change of the salty mineral phase of calcite to the fresh mineral phase takes about a couple of thousand to 10,000 years. So now you have to imagine, next slide please, that while these reactions take place, you have hydrological, hydrogeological processes taking place that have their speed. So if these speeds coexist, then we can actually solve this and get equilibria. However, if the hydrological process is much faster, we don't reach equilibria. So looking at both scales of hydrological and hydrochemical processes is a key process to understanding whether we work with reactions, reaction kinetics, or whether we can assume thermodynamic equilibrium. Next slide, please. This is visualized nicely if we look at a process that is, of course, of quite some importance now in Namibia, the precipitation of uranium minerals, uraninite, in a sandstone aquifer. So here we see the spatial scale from the recharge area, the evolution and development of different redox zones like nitrate reduction, manganese reduction, iron reduction zones, culminating in the uranium precipitation, molybdenum, selenium oxide precipitation, and then transitioning into sulfate reduction. So understanding the spatial scales of these processes and the time scales during which they evolve is key to being able to apply hydrochemistry in a quantitative sense. So this is what we are trying with the WaMiSAR project to actually support decision-making on this matter. Next slide, please. This slide introduces both scales and puts them next to each other. Well, we have the spatial scale of the aquifer with the evolution of the roll front of these different redox zones with a fresh groundwater flow on the left-hand side transitioning into the reduced zone on the right-hand side. You see what actually really happens within the aquifer at the pore scale. You see these uranium minerals growing in these pores. And this is, again, something we can describe quite easily. Now, you need to imagine that usually you do not know this. So you take samples, you are on the surface, and you need to create that picture of these different zones evolving. You need to understand the mechanism, the kinetics, the mass balances. Of course, you can support this by doing mineralogical analysis, like on the right-hand side, but you can also do this doing hydrochemistry, like below, where you see the evolution of different elements throughout that zoning. So you see nicely that you have first the pyrite increase, then you see a selenium peak almost coexisting with a vanadium peak. Then you see the uranium peak coexisting with the arsenic peak. And finally, you see the molybdenum peak if you go through this zone. So at each point, sampling point, you could actually take such a pore picture and do an analysis, but the whole thing evolves through time and through space. And it becomes obvious that now we can actually use ratios of these hydrochemical parameters, selenium, vanadium, uranium, arsenic, selenium, molybdenum, to actually better look into the evolution of these processes. And this is what I want to present today. Next slide, please. When I work, I follow this pyramid of, or this hierarchy pyramid of methods. I try to always stick to it. First, I do the topology, the structure, the spatial setup, the scales of the system. Second, obviously, we need to do the geology. We need to understand the geological structure of whatever we do. The geology then needs to be translated into hydrogeology to understand the hydrogeological properties of water flow. Of course, we need the hydrology, the recharge and discharge zones, the recharge rates. Before we even do chemistry, we need to check for physics. The water needs to flow from high to low. And chemistry without using this underpinning of the pyramid doesn't make sense in my view. So we need to actually constrain the results. When we have done our homework and we have laid the basis in our pyramid, then we can do hydrochemistry. And I also advise always to combine hydrochemistry with isotopes because it gives us new insights. So I always try to follow this hierarchy of work. Next slide, please. Before I move into the how, into the workflow, I want to actually give some ideas of what can be done with hydrochemistry. You all know that groundwater recharge can be studied nicely using the chloride method. It's a very straightforward, simple method. It has also been shown that this can be done at aquifer level, not only at site level, but Heike Wanke, who did a very nice study in the Kalahari. You probably know groundwater component studies. I will present one of them just to give you an idea. And if you are able to actually really identify end members, you even can go as far as to separate them. Then process identification is already is a bit more difficult and more rare. I want to show you a very nice application of residence time analysis. And of course, hydrochemistry can play an important role in validating groundwater models. So now we go to the how. Next slide, please. So groundwater recharge studies with chloride method is actually now already quite common. It's a standard method. We just use the enrichment of chloride. We have to follow some assumptions since the first papers of Stone in 1992. Next slide, please. And Cook et al. We actually have many examples of how nicely this works. For Namibia, this is also still a very, very good option if we follow that. So hydrochemistry here can actually be used for recharge estimation. Maybe also some other elements. This is something that we can earmark for future research. Next slide, please. The identification of components is actually a very interesting part of hydrochemical applications. This is a publication of Fidelibus that I was also co-author of, using gradients in the sum curves of different parameters that have been used to actually identify different hydrochemical groups. Next slide, please. This can then even lead to a comprehensive model of hydrochemical component analysis. I refer to the paper of Dolores Fidelibus of how this can be done very extensively here for the Mediterranean. So using this gradient approach, we can actually try to subdivide our aquifer into different zones or even identify different groundwater groups and then analyze how they interact. Slide, please. Yeah, this is the model that we have developed using that methodology. So splitting the groundwaters of the Mediterranean into quite a number of groups that then can be mapped, that we can actually then analyze in terms of their interactions. So this is actually a method that can be done. Yes, thank you. Can move to the next slide. At small scale, we rather know this. This is the subdivision or separation of components using EMMA, end-member mixing analysis. This is also a very simple, straightforward, standard tool. We have to be careful sometimes when there are nonlinearities or the parameters are ratios, but if we use concentrations, it is a quite linear and straightforward algebraic analysis. Next slide, please. In my PhD, I have actually integrated this into a workflow that goes from data collection through pyramid-like system analysis, discretization into components, identification of end members, and then an algorithm to actually let these end members mix and interact chemically so that mass balances are closed to come up with a model of groundwater flow that is quantitative. And I will just walk you through this work. Next slide, please. This was the work that we did for the northern Kalahari aquifer, and I'm now doing similar work for the Stump Creek Basin. So it all starts with many analyses, in this case 6,000 boreholes. For the Stump Creek we have a bit less, but we have also something like 2,000 boreholes now. We then actually plot them first and try to find different groups. You clearly see the group A, B, C, E, and D here. And once you have discovered them, you try to map them. Next slide, please. So the mapping of certain parameters, here you see the calcium-magnesium ratio, already shows that you have certain regions with similar chemistry. You see clearly the A and C group here, and the area of the Tsumeb mine, Otavi Mountains, with much lower calcium-magnesium ratios. You also see that in the Kalahari Desert, you have some differences. Next slide, please. If you look at the strontium-calcium ratio, you see other regions showing up like B and D, the Dolomites in this case, and you also find some dolomitic islands in the Kalahari aquifer. So by doing this, we can then actually delineate different aquifer zones. Next slide, please. It is also very useful to use calculations of saturation indices. In this graph, you see the area in which the sandstone water actually flows into the carbonate aquifers and creates areas of negative saturation indices, indicating dissolution, which is also evidenced by a high number of sinkholes in this region. So you can actually extend this and use several approaches to get an understanding of your regional distribution of aquifer units and water chemistry. Next slide, please. A very useful tool, in my view, is also the look at profiles. So you just check a profile that is based on a flow line, and you show how the look at how the evolution of hydrochemistry looks like. And you try to develop some hypothesis on what is actually going on here, hydrogeologically and hydrologically. So you see here the freshening, the dilution, and then the increase again of certain parameters which indicate that you have dissolution processes or mixing. When we have done this extensively, we try to develop a conceptual model of flows, maybe not only one, maybe several. This is the conceptual model that I had developed for the Waterberg, Otavi, Kalahari region, indicating which flows exist. This conceptual model that can then be validated using a compartment modeling approach to actually come up with real numbers. Next slide, please. So if you let these interact and you calculate the mass balance for all the elements, hydrochemical elements, even taking into account known hydrochemical reactions, you can try to use linear algebra until you find exactly those flows that satisfy the mass balance. And those flows are then a potential quantitative groundwater flow model. In the case of the Northern Kalahari, this worked like a charm. So you see here for each borehole, the contribution in percentage and the mass balance of the whole system with more than 12 different mixing cells was closed by 1 to 3% for all hydrochemical constituents. So this approach will now be also applied to the Stamford Basin to actually derive such a quantitative flow model. That is then used to validate the groundwater model. Next slide, please. A very interesting application that I found in preparation for this webinar is the use of hydrochemistry to actually date groundwater. And I want to apply this to the Stamford aquifers as well. This goes back to a paper of Lalba. It goes further back to an idea from Birmingham British Geological Survey. And it uses actually known hydrochemical indicators and uses known hydrochemical reactions and their kinetics to derive some indices that can be used as H indicator. Here, magnesium calcium is used, sodium potassium. In a more elaborated version, you also use sulfate to take into account gypsum effects and dedolomitization. Next slide, please. So below you see this fully evolved indicator and a comparison where you compare this to age dating using C14 from different studies and the IC factor that has been used here. Next slide, please. Visualizing this, you see that with chemistry alone, you can develop a proxy indicator for groundwater age. And I'm very thrilled to do this for the Stamford Basin because it will give us probably some very interesting new information on how ages evolve in the aquifer and solve some of the problems of C14 dating. The temporal scale is also interesting because it goes from 0 to 35,000 years, exactly the scale that we have for C14 dating. Next slide, please. I finally want to show you a study from the Mediterranean that we try to bring to Namibia and to the Kalahari as well, where we have used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different study areas and sampled them together and did a comparative analysis with modeling. Next slide, please. All these data have then been visualized first my workflow. And you see already that these regions differ. We were studying salinization processes. So you see that the Rhodope samples differ quite a bit from the samples, the green samples, for example, in Salento. You also see where all this goes, seawater. So the idea was to identify these processes. Next slide, please. Now, if we have this, we need to look for right scales. Obviously, the magnesium chloride scale and dimensions are not good because all the different study regions look similar. Magnesium and chloride behave in a very similar manner, regardless of the real salinization process. But, next slide, please. If we look at calcium chloride, for example, we suddenly see that Rhodope, like upper line middle, and Salento have different evolutions. Now we can run this for many different pairs of ions, this is exploratory to actually really find the dimensions in which we have the maximum variability. So there seems to be a difference in salinization between these two areas already. Next slide, please. Very interesting is it when we add isotopes to it. So here you see the addition of isotopes to actually further differentiate this. And we see that although these samples are all saline, there are obviously some differences. Next slide, please. Now, finally, we try to actually put the real processes into it. This is the overview of all the samples. Next slide, please, in a Piper diagram. And this is now the trace of certain samples that is produced by, in this case, evaporation. So what I did was I just took the samples, I put them into Freak-C, and I virtually evaporate the water sample and create a trace in the Piper diagram. Next slide, please. Here you see the same thing for ion exchange. So we take the same sample and we run it with Freak-C. Now we get some traces and fingerprints of hydrochemical processes. Now we can try to find these traces in our graphs. Next slide, please. So when you see these new correlation plots of the different areas, we then try to actually insert the virtually modeled or evaporated or ion exchange waters. In the lower right box, you see the red line, this evolution. This is actually a trace of a Freak-C model that we overlap, put onto our chemical data. Next slide, please. And by doing this, by combining these plots with Freak-C models, we can actually explain why certain chemical evolutions take place. We also want to do this for the Stamford aquifer. And this leads us now to the final workflow. Next slide, please. Where we actually have these different regions and we combine the measured observations with modeled evolutions. You see this in the lower right box. So we see these different evolutions for ion exchange and evaporation, and we can then actually look up which processes occur in which basins. Next slide, please. This is the final workflow. So I just try to introduce as a base the principles. So we need some knowledge on hydrochemistry processes, and we need to have some theoretical ideas of models. Of course, we need to follow a good workflow from good measurements. We have to consider scales. We need to check for equilibria, saturation indices, and I would say walk the pyramid. Once we have done this, we can go through the blue workflow, organizing the data. I do this with Pandas, Python, and R, transforming the data, logarithms, SI ratios, ion ratios. Then correlation of variables. I like to follow Mazur's B-plots. It's a hydrochemist who has done this extensively. We then try to reduce complexity by trying to find end members and groups by cluster analysis. We can also use modern machine learning tools of classification. We then identify these components and we add the chemical modeling with freq C to explain these end members and their evolutions. And we can then finally add everything up to a compartment model like the one that I did in my PhD and that I want to redo for the Stamford Basin. Last slide, please. So I hope I opened the gate for you to use hydrochemistry, and I hope you know what's in the box. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christoph. Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. I would like to open the floor in case there are any questions. Please just speak with a microphone or raise your virtual hand. So in the meantime, if there are no questions, I actually have a very short one because you presented a very nice workflow and it always seems quite easy once the path has been already laid. But how long does it take to really reach from point zero to finally understanding a system?
To figure out how it works, 25 years since my PhD. But now to do it really, I would say 2 or 3 weeks once you have all the data. So you now I work with R to have reproducible workflows, and working with R, of course, all the scripts are there. You just need to adjust them, and you just need to judge and take some decisions. But the workflow is actually quite fast now.
I figured that it would take some time to get it started, but it's good to hear that right now it's a much faster running setting. Perfect. So if there are no other questions in the audience, please feel free to contact any of us.
Yes, I'm sorry, first of all, again, for the delay and for the difficulty of arranging this. I would be very happy to receive your comments by email, and I would take time to actually reply to them. I would be happy to work with you if you're interested in my work. Of course, I'm also happy to work with students to supervise them. Yeah, and thank you again.
I think there is a question.
I've got a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. First of all, thank you so much for an amazing session. Thought it was really, really interesting. My name is Armin. I'm based in Windhoek, Namibia. I'm actually farming in the as a part-time farmer in the Stamford aquifer. So that's why we are obviously very concerned in terms of the proposed mining in the area. And as such, I just wanted to know, it's the first time I'm hearing that these studies going on from between NUST and the university. So I just wanted to know what are the next steps and who is, who's sponsoring your studies? Is it the mining company? Is it the government of Namibia? Is it private people? How does it work?
The work is funded by the German Ministry of Research, Education and Transfer, and I've already gathered the hydrochemical data for the Stamford Basin. I'm very thankful to the Namibian institutions who have provided the data. So we are now doing the hydrochemical analysis for the Stamford Basin, following these lines of what I've presented today, to delineate the evolution of the water, to understand the zoning, to understand also the areas where uranium is deposited and how these processes might change under external stress. And I think we will be done this summer or autumn with the analysis. Of course, we will continue this project for more time. We need to sample, validate this, but the analysis based on existing data can actually be completed until this summer. I know this is a very important and urgent issue for Namibia. Okay. So unfortunately, I need to apologize myself now. I thank you again, and I really hope that we will have some email exchange I promise to reply swiftly to everyone asking this, if any questions. Okay?
Yeah, there is in the chat a request for your email, so I will forward them your email address, and then they can write to you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the talk.
Apologies, I raised my hand.
Okay.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Lorika Afrikaner. I work for the Department of Water Affairs, and I would like to find out from Dr. Külls, is the Department of Water Affairs involved in the study that you are doing around Stamperit?
Absolutely. Last autumn, we have visited all the experts. We're working closely with them. They have provided us with data, and we will actually return the results to them. Of course, both the hydrogeology and the hydrology section. So Nina Krüger will work on a hydrological toolbox to provide the Namibian government, Department of Water Affairs, with current tools for hydrology. And with the hydrogeology section, I will feedback the results to the Department of Water Affairs and to all the institutions in Namibia wish to work with them.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Of course, also Geological Survey has been involved, and NamWater and all the institutions that have an interest in this study.
Okay. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Thank you. Hope to hear from you.
So thank you very much, and I will close, the session. There are other meetings to attend, so thank you everyone for coming, and see you next time in the next webinar.